Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled Greater Works You Shall Do, Part 4. The conceptual model of greater works. What qualifies a work as a greater work? The podcast objectives are provide a summary of the social model for greater works, reveal the qualifications of a spiritual work, reveal the qualifications of a great work, and analyze the link between greater works and purpose. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcasts or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us. For these are troubling times, and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below, and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. Good questions asked by bad actors. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome back to our Word from a Watchman series. In the most recent podcast, we concluded our analysis of the social model for greater works, and here is the final verdict. Those who will see and do greater works in these last days are men and women whose eyes have been opened and they can see the revelation and the glorious gospel of Yahushua Messiah by the Ruach of Elohim. Hallelujah. Notwithstanding, we were clear that the revelation of Yahushua Messiah is a category 10 on the scale of knowledge. Ergo, receiving this knowledge is a revolutionary process. Here is what that means. There are levels to the revelation of Yahushua Messiah, just as there are levels of his Torah and his Tehudah. Ergo, you must fulfill the knowledge requirements of any given level if you are to move on to the next. Now, this speaks to the primary dividing line between those who will do greater works and those who won't. To wit, the vast majority of those who won't are false Hebrews who have never fulfilled the requirements upon the first level of this revelation. Here again, it's not because these requirements are difficult to understand. On the rather, it is because these requirements are difficult to follow, for they are parallel to our ascension of the pinnacle of holiness. Here lies the problem. Vis-a-vis, false Hebrews are not ascending the pinnacle of holiness, for they are chained to the mountain of lawlessness, to wit, the spiritual abode of all who are defiled and spiritually unclean. Now, this is why I ended the most recent podcast with a warning against these false Hebrews and the false prophets who are leading them into endless death. That said, I'm not against honest questions. I invite them every day and at the end of each podcast. But I resist and I call out the dishonest questions of false Hebrews who are not seeking to understand. Let me tell you something. These bad actors are beyond understanding, for as they have not unlocked the fear of Elohim, they have no power to guard his command. Now, it is true that a question can be dishonest and at the same time be legitimate. To wit, a good question can be asked by a bad actor. This is why the enemy is often referred to as a wolf in sheep's clothing. Here again, this is why you must operate with the ruach of discernment. To wit, you must see beyond what was asked and you must understand why it was asked. For the why factor reveals what is in the heart. And this is one of many reasons why Yahushua Messiah was so powerful in judgment and right ruling. For his ability to operate at the highest levels of discernment allowed him to see what was in the hearts of men. And as his disciples, we must do the same. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, even if you are a novice when it comes to discernment, it doesn't take a spiritual genius to observe the works of men. Believe me, it is true. You can see what is in the heart of every man if you pay attention to what they do. Now, Matthew 7:16 through 20 is revealing, by their fruits you shall know them. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? So every good tree yields good fruit, but a rotten tree yields wicked fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then, by their fruits you shall know them. Now, this passage is the key to understanding the most basic model of discernment. To wit, just look at the fruit of every man. That is a summary of all their works, and compare that summary to the Tehuda of Yahushua Messiah. Here lies the inflection. Vis-a-vis, the false Hebrews are full of doubt, disobedient to guard the commands, in contempt of the will of Elohim, and filled with the ruachoth of prejudice. As I say, this is their fruit. This is their work. Now, that said, how can any of these bad actors understand the complex matters of the revelation of Yahushua Messiah? Do you think it is the will of Elohim that false Hebrews should receive great wisdom and knowledge, even though they have lost their minds? Do you think that the Most High Elohim is one to cast out his greatest treasures, his finest pearls, to be trampled by spiritual dogs, goats, and swine? Of course not. The question then is, who is driving them to seek for knowledge that Yahuwah will never give them? Enter the God of this age, who has blinded their minds from receiving the revelation and the glorious gospel of Yahushua Messiah. Therefore, I admonish you once again, seeing as we have a clear line of demarcation between those who can and those who cannot do greater works, do not be led astray into fruitless debates with unbelievers who will never see the truth you have seen. As I say, the master told us what he would do with these impostors. Look here. He is going to cut them down, and then he is going to throw them into the fire, where they will be weeping and gnashing their teeth. Now, as for the rest of us, the true disciples of Yahushua Messiah and children of the Most High Elohim, we have a long way to go to receive this great revelation and to unlock the power to do greater works. For this is all a part of his master plan to turn back our captivity and to give us power, authority, and dominion within the earth. And so, if you are ready, let's continue and let's get started. What qualifies a work as a greater work? Now, if you recall, the social model is only one of the four models of understanding. Ergo, there are three more models we must analyze to know the truth concerning greater works. Enter the conceptual, the analytical, and the procedural. From now, we will begin to address the conceptual. To wit, now that we have determined who can do greater works, we must now analyze the concept of greater works at a high level. That is to ask, what is a greater work? Now, as it is my custom, I will answer this question by providing a definition for greater works to ensure that we are considering this spiritual factor from a uniform spiritual perspective. By definition, greater works are the highest order of works that can be executed on behalf of the kingdom of Elohim, contingent to the magnitude, quality, and quantity of the spiritual product of an enterprise and or office. Now, we should analyze this definition by teasing apart the intersection of two concepts, vis-a-vis what qualifies a work as great and what qualifies a work as a work. Let's get to work. Now, first things first, we should analyze what qualifies a work as a work. Along these lines, a work is the spiritual product of an enterprise and or office, the key word being spiritual. Here is what this means. If the work that is accomplished is not directed by the set apart spirit, then by strict definition, it cannot be classified as a work. Here lies the inflection and the problem. To wit, the majority within our nation don't even have the set apart spirit. Ergo, the product of their work is not recognized by Elohim, even if some good comes from it. Now, this speaks to the inflection, to wit, the fact that some good may come from a work does not classify the work as a greater work. or even a good work. For even a good work must be approved by Elohim, which suggests it derives from the Ruach of Elohim. And thus, we have reached a final verdict on this matter. To wit, a work is an assignment you have been given by the set apart spirit of Elohim, which results in a spiritual product that reflects the enterprise and or office to which you were called. Ergo, all other activities fall outside the scope of the spiritual precedence of work, and all who follow after them are not approved unto Elohim, and they shall have their reward. The three factors of a great work. Now, this brings us to the second question we must address vis-a-vis what qualifies a work as great. This is crucial for by establishing the baseline for a great work, we can easily ascertain a greater work. Let's make it happen. Now, there are three primary factors which qualify a work as a great work. Enter magnitude, quality, and quantity. Now, per magnitude, the impact of the work would be transcendent, to wit, the total effect in the lives of all who are impacted by the work is high on every spiritual scale. And as it is transcendent, it is impossible to calculate. Now, per quality, the work would be executed in line with the spiritual guidelines, i.e., rules that were provided. Here lies the inflection. To wit, Yahuwah is not only interested in what you did, quite the contrary, for he is also interested in how you did it. And in many cases, how you did it is even more important than what you did. For look, listen, it has been written. And if anyone strives for masteries, he is not crowned unless he strives according to the rules. As I say, there are rules of engagement upon every spiritual enterprise and office, and the greatness of the work of the enterprise and or office is measured by their success in following the rules of engagement. Now, this is more crucial than many realize, for the rules make up the standard, and the standard determines quality. Ergo, the more one strays from the standard, the more they decrease the quality of their work. Here lies the danger vis-a-vis any deviation from the standard would result in a sharp decrease in quality, which would in turn disqualify the work from being a greater work. This is why you must take heed to the standard of the spiritual enterprise and or office to which you were called. For look, listen, it has been written. Do you not know that those who run in a race indeed all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way as to obtain it. Therefore, I run accordingly, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air. Now, last but not least, per quantity, the successful execution of a work would lead to another one, and another one, and another one. Along these lines, the product of a great work is another great work. And when you put all these great works together, you have greater works. And this is clear from our master's prophecy, to wit, when he said that we would do greater works, he was largely talking about quantity. This is why he qualified his declaration, saying, "Because I go to my Father." And yet, even though the sum of all the great works of his disciples, past and present, would exceed his, there would be no greater works if Yahushua did not achieve his. Amen. A time and purpose for greater works. Now, the final thing I would say about the conceptual model of greater works is this: your perspective of greater works must be aligned with the purpose of these last days. That is, to renew the earth and to repopulate it with a righteous seed of the remnant of man. Now, this is crucial for one of the primary reasons why the masses will never see greater works is because they have a false concept of greater works. As I say, greater works are like every word of prophecy, to wit, they are established upon purpose. Ergo, if Yahuwah does not have a purpose for the greater work, trust me, there will be no greater work. As I say, this is why our prior views on greater works should not be applied to the times and seasons we are living in today. Along these lines, our people have been under the curse of this captivity for many hundreds of years. And although many have witnessed greater works during this captivity, Yahuwah has begun to turn back our captivity. Ergo, we will witness even greater works. Notwithstanding, this is where the conceptual model of greater works meets the social. To wit, those who fail to understand the conceptual model for greater works are not qualified to do greater works. For one cannot do what he cannot understand. And yet, seeing as we are true disciples of Yahushua Messiah, we have been called to do greater works. And that begins with our understanding of greater works at the high level, which I pray you have achieved by considering this lesson. From now, we must move on to the analytical model for greater works, and we must answer the question: why is it Yahuwah's will that we do greater works in these last days? And we will begin to answer this question next Friday. As always, stay locked in, watch and pray, and Yahuwah bless you until then. Now, here is the final word. Be sure to put the Spirit first before you rise to do your work. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, it is true that many men and women are doing work in these last days, but the majority of them are not doing greater works. We know this because none of them are approved unto Elohim, for their eyes have been closed to the revelation of Yahushua Messiah. Ergo, when the time comes for their work to be tried, they will not survive the fire. Heretofore, I recommend, don't settle for paltry works that have low value, even if some good should come. For Greater works are the only works that have the power to lift up everyone. Selah. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson. And if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com. And I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, Greater Works You Shall Do, Part 4. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 646, Reigning Over Ignorance and Deception, Part 6. I will post this podcast on Monday, April 27th, 2026. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.